Morning guys, on this video we'll be looking at a test route in Ashfield, Sutton-in-Ashfield. So we're starting up in the car park here with the test centre building in front of us. The car park you'll actually use, the section of this for your test, is over on the right as you come into the test centre. So you'll see that as we swing around now, where all the cones are, and the white car is over the far side, so you just park before those cones. When you come around leaving the test centre, there's a giveaway line just in front here, so watch out for traffic using this road from your left or coming towards you to go to the left, because they have priority on you, so examiners want to see you making those checks, being aware of that. Now up ahead, we're going to see our first fault by the learner on this mock test. So as you come up to the end here, you want to keep the car nice and straight all the way to the giveaway line, because on your left is the entry to a industrial unit. The pupil instead leans over. There's some very faded markings there dividing you from that incoming lane, so you want to make sure you're not crossing over that. When you're turning right towards Mansfield at traffic lights. Now the pupil is a little bit late making the lane change, but it was done with good mirror checks, there were signals, and I didn't see that there was enough of an error to mark this. There was nobody close behind or anything, so I wouldn't mark that as a fault in that occasion. We just skipped through some of the traffic lights because we're sat here for quite a while, and that happens quite a bit on this test route, on this mock test, so there's a few times where the lights will just skip forward like that. As we make the turn, you notice the pupil went straight into the left-hand lane there. Now that's the ideal position, unless you're turning right at the next set of lights, then you'd want the right-hand lane. So I always teach my pupils, you go to the left lane unless you know otherwise, unless there's markings telling you differently, or unless your intention is to go a different route from where that left lane leads you. And when we move away from traffic lights, just using your mirrors before you move away, make sure that you're aware of who's coming with you, particularly in Ashfield, because there's a lot of these traffic light junctions, like this one. As you go across the junction, the two lanes merge in shortly afterwards. So you want to know who's alongside you, who's got the intention to carry on past you, or if they're holding back to let you continue as well. The pupil's about to make her first directional error, so there's a sign coming up on the left telling us that Mansfield is a right turn. And what she should have done at this point is got on her mirrors, got the right signal on, and followed that line outwards, but instead she gets into the, as you can see, the second lane there for straight. She should be where that white Yaris is over on the right there, ideally, or where the blue Skoda just went. So either of those two lanes to turn right. Now whichever lane you're in at these junctions, if you're turning in particular, you've got to stick that lane as you go across the junction. So if you're in the left, you stay on the left as you leave the junction, and if you're on the right, you stay on the right as you leave that junction. Again, using the mirrors just to show that you're aware of who's with you, and you're eliminating the risks involved of potentially merging lanes. Now on this junction that doesn't happen, but the mirror use is still quite useful. It's still helpful just to keep you up to date on who's around. Up ahead we've got some traffic lights. You can see the reminders here for the 40-mile-an-hour zone. You can see up ahead the traffic. We're just keeping a good distance on it. We've got a bit of poor weather on this mock test, so quite heavy hail this is. So if the weather turns, make sure your wipers are on, make sure your lights are switched on, and just reduce your speed when you're driving around and increase your stopping space. Use your mirrors more effectively and give yourself more space at all times, and that way you're reducing the chance of getting caught out by that poor weather, reducing your visibility or reducing your grip on the road. Again, up ahead we've got some traffic lights, and we'll see Mansfield's off to the right, so the pupil here has moved over using the mirrors, using the signals again. We're down to 30 mile an hour, just in the sign on the left there, and then up to the traffic lights into the right only lane. Now on this one you'll notice there's an extra set of lights on the far side, so we've got the left hand set of lights is for straight and left, and the right hand side is for the right turn. So we're in a separate lane, and we've got our own filter box here, filter light. So as we move forward we can progress, because that green arrow gives us a free pass basically to cross the oncoming cars while they're still on a red light. Now, just before we made that turn, I pointed out there was a 30 sign just on the left as we come up to these lights. Unfortunately, my pupil makes an error here in that she didn't see that and she thought it was a 40 zone because our Sat Nav says 40 at this point. Now, you should never rely on the Sat Nav to give you that information, because that, in this circumstance in particular, is wrong. They sometimes take a while to update if the speed limit's been reduced, and that of course means that you're not looking around for road signs, you're not following what's required on the road, and instead you're following the device which is out of date. So it's important to keep your Sat Nav up to date, and just keep in mind that even with up to date Sat Nav, recent changes don't show up straight away. They can take sometimes months before they actually update them, particularly on the system that examiners use, which is TomTom. I've noticed it can take up to a year to update some of the speed limits. Now, this is the point my pupil realised that she was actually over the speed limit, because we've got the thank you sign on the left, that LED board, which picked up her speed as 32 as she came up to it. Now, I've let her continue to this point because it's not a significant speed over. She's doing about 34, 35, but because it's quite a while that she's doing it, it had to be recorded as a serious fault. If it had just been a few seconds, then maybe a driver's fault, or if she'd have just been doing 31, 32, then maybe a driver's fault. But because it was 34, 35 and it was for quite a while, it's got to be a serious fault. And just as we came up there, I've asked the pupil to pull over. Again, use your mirrors, use your signals, pull over at a safe place, and then when it's time to go again, you check your mirrors, check your blind spot, signal if you need to, and move out. Don't rush to pull out in front of people. Sometimes the examiners will say, drive on when you're ready, literally as you stop. So don't rush yourself to get going, just pause, take a breath, and then do your checks and move on. Don't feel you've got to hurry away from that situation. Cars like that Fiat are always worth watching out for, because that car could have just carried on round and came back into the road on the next drop curb. So just be cautious around other vehicles there. Just a little way ahead, we've got a traffic light junction. We're going to turn left. The signpost here is town centre, so it's getting us back en route towards Mansfield. Now, the pupil unfortunately makes another mistake here, putting her signal on about now. Now, in my opinion, because we've come up to the queue here and we've got the driveway on the left, it does look like she's going to the pub instead. And whilst that might be tempting on your test, you're not allowed to pull into the pub and have a pint. You shouldn't be signalling to go in there unless you're actually going in there. So the signal should have come on about now. Just up ahead here, the pupil's about to make another mistake, which is to do with planning and awareness. There's a BMW pulling out from the side road, but there's oncoming cars preventing him from completing the turn. So instead of slowing down nice and early, giving the BMW time to move out of the way, and giving herself time to stop nice and smoothly, the pupil instead carries on the accelerator and then ends up having to slow down quite quickly as we get close to the BMW. Not quite enough to warrant a serious fault, because it was handled, it just could have been responded to a lot sooner. So just a driver fault on that occasion. Up ahead, I've asked my pupil to follow the signs for Nottingham. So this is just bringing us in towards Mansfield, and at the very end we're going to take a right at the traffic lights. And when we come up to that, you'll notice there's two lanes that you can use. Either lane is absolutely fine as long as you stay in that lane when you make the turn. So if you start on the left lane, you turn into the left lane. The pupil here, she just cuts across the markings there into the filter box a little bit early, in my opinion. Again, not enough to warrant a serious fault, but just enough to be notable on the mark sheet. So the pupil's taken up the right hand of the two positions at this lane, this junction, and skipping the lights again because we were there for a good minute and a half. As you can see here, the pupil holds in the right hand lane as she completes the turn, and then there's some really good mirror checks and a signal before moving back into the left, and that's absolutely perfect. Not worth recording a fault for, even though she could have used the left lane. She dealt with that absolutely beautifully. As we're coming up here, you can see the 40 sign. However, my pupil does accelerate just a little above 30 before reaching the sign, so I'm going to record a driver fault there. It wasn't too much, but it's just the acceleration before going through that sign. Coming up here, we've moved over into the next lane, some good mirror use, some good signalling, just to get out of that left-only lane. And again, we're sat at the lights, make some good mirror checks before you move away, and keep doing those mirror checks as you go across the junction. Just got to be aware again of those lanes potentially merging in. Even if they don't merge in, it's still good to keep an eye on who's alongside you. So very, very good observations throughout this test. I don't think I recorded a single mirror fault on this, which is fantastic. To just constantly keep those eyes moving, keep aware of who's around you, particularly where you've got lanes alongside you like this. Pupil holds a position really well in that left lane and just carries on really beautifully down here. So we're back into a 30 zone now. Of course, making sure you spot those speed limit signs so you don't end up creeping over the limit. If you do creep over, just like you seen earlier, it can quickly escalate from a driver fault to a serious fault. Again, wherever there's traffic like this, my pupil here is keeping a really good following space behind vehicles. She's very conscious of the side roads and doesn't obstruct any of them while she's queuing up, and that's fantastic. Always leave plenty of room behind the vehicle in front. Make sure you can see the bottom of the tyres at least, and that if anything happens, you've got that little bit of space between. So, for example, if the van broke down, you can make all around it because there's nowhere that I'm pushing that. Up ahead, the lanes do merge, and again, we've got traffic, so the pupil's keeping a really good following space on the van, and she's very, very conscious of the mirrors and the traffic that could be coming around her. Up ahead, we've got a few parked cars, so again, lots of mirror use as you go through gaps like this. There's plenty of room, of course, but the examiners want to see you checking those mirrors just to make sure you're leaving that space on the left, and of course, watching out for the potential for doors opening or cars moving away or pedestrians walking out between them. So if you can't give the physical space, then slow down, and that increases your chance of stopping before a problem gets in the way. Up ahead, we're taking the next left. There's a sign on the right there pointing to Forest Town. So of course we come up to the corner, make sure you're looking up and in, using the mirrors and signal on the approach, and just adapting your speed to whatever that corner needs. If your vision's poor, slow down more. A little further, we're going to take a right turn, and then I'm going to get the pupil to pull over and do a hill start. So you'll typically pull over and move off about 4 times on your test. Normally one will be a hill start and one will be an angle start where you pull up next to a parked car and then move off again. As ever, we want to make sure we're using those mirrors, checking that blind spot before we pull out, particularly where your view is restricted by parked vehicles and the space is restricted. You want to be mindful of cars coming the other way. If you pull out and there is a car coming the other way, that's going to be a very quick fail on your test, of course. So just make sure you've got plenty of space ahead of you. And again, using both sides of the car, both mirrors, just to check your space as you go through, checking for doors opening, checking for pedestrians ahead, everything. It could be a risk. You just want to be showing the examiner that you're aware of the potential problems. At the end of the road, we're going to take a left turn. The view to the right is pretty poor here, so the pupil slows down really, really well, checking the left mirror, getting the signal on in good time, and tucking the car right into the corner. and as you can see there, just a quick pause before pulling out again. I think quite a nice progressive way of getting out on the road. There was a car coming, but the pupil built the speed up quite well there, so it didn't cause them an issue in my opinion, and wasn't worth marking a fault. So again, as long as you pull out and you don't cause a problem to other vehicles, then you're not going to get any faults. But if you're not sure about those gaps, just hold back, don't rush. Up ahead we've got a roundabout. Now there's actually a double mini roundabout here. We're going to go right at the first one, so priority is from the right, so the cars coming from the right get priority over you. And you'll see there's 2 lanes on this one, so you want to make sure you're in the correct position. You're checking the right hand side for anyone coming or oncoming cars that might be turning across, and then just round the painted dot and off your exit, and away you go again. Checking those mirrors for anyone who's following or anyone who's potentially cut the corner and overtaking you. Up ahead you'll see a warning sign for a bend to the right, and on that bend we are going to be turning left. There's a junction just on the side there. You'll see the bollards coming up, the cars coming up to the end here. It's quite a tight corner, so again we just reduce our speed, put your eyes up into the road and take your time on the way in. Mirror checks as you finish the turn, and then make good progress into the road ahead. So the examiners want to see you building up your speed where it's safe, but of course being cautious where there's stuff going on, where there's more potential hazards around. Now up ahead, I'm going to ask my pupil to pull up on the right hand side of the road to perform a right reverse manoeuvre. Now the idea of this is you find a safe place to pull over on the right hand side, pop your mirrors and signal, and gently bring the car to pull up near the curb on the right. The examiner will then ask you to reverse about 2 car lengths, keeping close to the curb, and then they'll ask you to move on again, to drive on, rejoining the road. So pupils is really well pulling over to the right on this one, as you'll see in a moment. However, this is where she's going to make her next serious fault. So over we go, and we're going to pull up near the curb, so she's getting nice and close to the curb, nice and straight with it, which is perfect. And then before reversing the 2 car lengths, there's loads of shoulder checks, there's loads of looking around. Unfortunately for the pupil, as she was looking around, she leant on the steering wheel, and as a result the car drifted into the curb and actually went up the dropped curb that was behind. So her back wheel was completely on the curb. She even managed to get her front wheel on the curb as well doing this. So just be very, very careful about your steering while you do this. You can see the car leaning to the right now. There's the back wheel up the curb, there's the front wheel up the curb, and both wheels are completely on the curb. So that would be a serious fault in this occasion. Really good checks and signals before moving off again. Pupil looks over her left shoulder before moving. Now this is where I typically advise my pupils to do a second blind spot check just as they get the car angled out, just so they can ensure the road's fully clear. The same if you do your angle start, I advise double checking that right shoulder as you start steering outwards, and that way you get a better view of the road behind you just before you fully commit to bringing the car out. Now we're going to use this van on the left to do an angle start. So I've got the pupil to pull up about a car length away from the van, just enough to get out and around it. The examiners will sometimes say don't worry about the driveways when you do this. So in this case the pupil is going to block the driveway, but that is because I've told her it doesn't matter on this occasion. Again, when we move out, right blind spot check over your shoulder before starting to move the car. And then as the nose of the car sticks out, do a second check just to confirm before you fully commit to going around that vehicle. Always be aware of the oncoming cars as well, because you're going to be sticking out into the wrong side of the road briefly. Last thing you want to do is have the examiner have to stop you because you pulled out into the path of an oncoming car. So yeah, always double check what's ahead of you before moving out around the vehicle as well. Now we're coming up to the end of the road shortly, and you can see the giveaway sign on the left. It's a blank giveaway with a distance underneath it, giving you a heads up of a hidden giveaway. So as you come around the bend, that's the end of the road. We'll be turning right, so again, mirrors and signals in good time, checking both sides before pulling out, because you don't want to be rolling out without having a clear view of what's there. And you can see the sign there for the roundabout coming up, where we'll be going right 4th exit. The pupil does a beautiful job on this roundabout, keeping the right hand lane on approach, lots of mirror use, good checks for vehicles coming around, and nice and progressive when there is a gap. She's straight into that right hand lane and just gets on with it. What we don't want to do is hesitate, and also we want to keep our mind on that 4th exit, because if we lose our bearings as you enter that roundabout, you're not going to be able to exit safely. Pupil does beautifully here, mirrors and signal are done, and a gentle move over to that left hand lane before building a speed up. So absolutely perfect. She does beautifully on the next 2 roundabouts as well. So we're entering a 40 zone now, and just a little way ahead we're going to come to another roundabout where we'll be going straight on, and then shortly after that another roundabout where we'll be turning right. Again, we can see the warning signs up on the left there. We've got some traffic lights and the risk of horse riders in the area. Then the big direction sign there for the roundabout. So we're going straight ahead. Pupil positions really nicely in the left-hand lane there. Now, whatever lane you choose, you want to stick that position on the way around. And this Fiesta is an example of why if you cut that lane when there's someone coming around you, you're going to cause a collision or a near miss. So Pupil does really well on this one, keeping that left-hand position. The next roundabout, I've asked it to turn right 3rd exit, so we need to change lanes. This is where the mirrors need to be covered, the signals to be on in good time, and just a gentle move into that lane. Now again, mirrors and signal before we enter the roundabout, and we're going to keep that right hand lane as we go into the roundabout, so we're not cutting lanes up. But as we leave the roundabout, we want to shuffle over to the left using the left mirror and the left signal. So you'll see the pupil do another brilliant job coming around this roundabout, keeping on the right hand side nice and close to it. And as we come around past the 2nd exit, she checks the left mirror, she puts her signal on, and she gently brings the car over to the left lane on the exit. So this is one of these roundabouts that doesn't spiral. You have to cross that lane to exit, so you've got to make sure you do it safely. Now, did you spot the speed change just behind the traffic lights then? If not, flick back and have a look. You'll notice this is a national speed limit road, so on a single carriageway you're allowed to do up to 60 miles an hour. And of course you want to do what is safe, not just what is legal. So the pupil isn't doing 60 because she doesn't feel it's safe because of the wet conditions, because of the poor visibility ahead. All of the water on the windscreen of course makes a difference, and the reduced grip on the road as well. As we approach the next junction, we're going to be turning right at the traffic lights. Now you can see the huge direction sign up on the left there, so that's the cue to start your routine, to start looking at your mirrors and planning for that right turn. Mirrors done, signals done, and then we're going to gently move into the filter lane on the right. The pupil does cut the lines here, but under this circumstance, I don't think that's unreasonable. If she'd have stuck in the lane and then changed as the markings directed, the car behind could have cut around her and obstructed her from moving. So the broken lines do allow you to cross them because it's got to be safe and necessary to do. We don't want to just cut them just because it's an easier path or it takes less effort. It's got to be safe and reasonable to do it, and the highway code actually says safe and necessary. Up ahead we're going to be taking a left turn. You can see the speed reduces to 30 miles an hour, So the pupil slows down, pops on mirrors and signals, and brings the car in nice and tight for that turn. There's quite a poor view because the hedging on the corner, so she's taking it in nice and slowly, which is absolutely perfect. Now the road ahead isn't that wide, but the speed does pick up a little further on. So like we said on that last national speed limit road, it's not about what the legal limit is, it's about what's safe and within that limit. So some roads where there's a 60 mile an hour, you may only do 40 or even 30 depending on the conditions. So the sign for national speed limit is just hidden behind the hedge there, and then up to the traffic lights we're going to be taking a left turn. Now, as we approach this junction, the pupil puts her signal on very early, so I've recorded another signal timing fault. Notice the speed change as we come up to the junction as well, and then as we make a turn, you're going to see another speed change. So it's really important to keep your eyes up for these speed limit changes. If you miss them and you end up either speeding or not making safe progress, then you're going to end up getting faulted. So it's really important to keep your eyes up for those limits. So 50 mile an hour up here. And again, the pupil makes really good progress up this road, building a speed to what is comfortable and safe, because of course we don't want to go too fast, we don't want to go too slow. We've got to balance that speed nice and comfortably to the conditions to keep the road and the car safe. Up ahead, you can see the warnings there, queues likely, and a junction on the right. So the examiners will expect you to be watching out for this, to be covering your mirrors, and even potentially to slow down a little bit if there's something going on ahead. Normally, if you've got a road on the right, you can have cars queuing up for that turn. And then, of course, you have to slow down and stop. It could be the car in front of the van signalling. You won't see it, so you've got to watch out for the van's reaction to that car as well. So just think ahead when you see those warning signs of what you can't see as well as what you can see. A little further up, we are coming to a traffic light junction where we'll be turning right, and this is going to bring us pretty much back to the test centre. As we're approaching, you'll see the big direction sign on the left there, so again, check your mirrors, pop your signal on as you're coming up to that, and then there's a filter lane for the right turn. As the learner approaches this, unfortunately she doesn't plan very well for the traffic lights, so they've been green quite a while. What we should be doing is relaxing off the power, covering the brake, ready for us to slow down and stop if they change. Ideally, we want to think of a point of no return, a point where it's no longer safe to stop, and at that point we continue through the junction. As we turn, you can see that national speed limit again, so we can progress up to 60 mile an hour if the road is safe, if the conditions are safe. If you don't feel that that's safe due to the weather or due to the condition of the road or busyness of the road, then don't do it. Now up this road, there's two occasions my pupil makes an error with her steering. Now this is a really easy mistake to make. Unfortunately, she fixates on what's coming the other way and then drifts towards the line. So instead of actually keeping herself in line, she starts leaning towards the oncoming traffic, towards that centre line, and you'll see that happen a couple of times. So I've recorded 2 faults for that along this road. Just be very mindful of how you're driving down these roads. We don't want to be drifting towards that line. We don't want to be getting close to the oncoming vehicles. You want to be nice and central in your position. So 2 faults, unfortunately, for normal driving position, which you'll see recorded just up ahead. There's one. and there's the other. Now you can see the potential risk involved in doing that, that if you're drifting towards that oncoming car, you're doing 40-50 mile an hour and they're doing 40-50 mile an hour, that's going to be quite a hard impact. It wasn't enough to put us at any risk in my opinion, but it was enough to be notable and just talk to the pupil about at the end of the test. Now we're just approaching a mini roundabout. So again, just like all the other roundabouts, it's the traffic from the right that gets priority. So you want to reduce your speed and make sure you can see what's approaching and whether they're going to turn across your path before you commit to that junction. Then we've got a level crossing up ahead, watching for the lights here. If they do come on, treat it like a traffic light, approach ready for them to come on. And then once you get so close to them, that point of no return, then we continue. And make sure you can get fully across before you commit to them as well, because you don't want to get stuck on them on the railway lines. We're going to turn left back into the test centre just behind this blue sign. It says Sherwood House on it, and we want to get right close to the sign as we turn. And the pupil does a really nice job there, bringing the car in and then making their way back into the car park. So that gives us a grand total of 8 driver faults and 3 serious faults, unfortunately, for this pupil. So it's not a pass on this occasion. Now, if you have found this video useful, please like, share and subscribe, and I'll do my best to put more of these out for you. Thank you and God bless.